At the end of last week, you might have heard about that report, a study by the CAA-Quebec showing there's not a lot of data about e-bikes and e-scooters, how safe they are on the roads, what the regulation should be. The report also highlighted the fact that the regulations across Quebec are not uniform. And in fact, some municipalities may have different rules for different vehicles. So the upshot, the CAA-Quebec is saying, is that we need to take a closer look at e-scooters and e-bikes. And I think if you've ever seen some kid zipping along on an e-scooter or an e-bike, often with no helmet on, going as fast as a car would on a suburban street, you understand why there's a lot of concern that we haven't looked more closely at this. Joining us from the CAA-Quebec Foundation for Road Safety is its director, André Durocher. André, good to speak to you again.
Good afternoon.
Give us the crash course, if I can use that expression, in what your study determined about e-bikes and e-scooters in Quebec.
Well, as we've seen in the past couple of years, there's been a multiplication of various ways to get around with the e-scooters, e-bikes, etc. That's a good news in itself because it offers, many alternatives to transportation. The downside is, as you mentioned it at the beginning, there's no uniformity, and also there's no really good data in terms of, for example, the type of injuries. Yes, people in emergency wards have seen some injuries, like to the head or to the elbows, knees, etc. But the reason why there's no, I would say, convincing data is the fact that when police officers take those kind of reports, let's say a kid falls off a scooter, the police is called, whatever, it won't necessarily be put, okay, scooter, etc. So what we're saying is that there has to be data with regards to the dangers involved, and then also uniformity in terms of legislation. You mentioned something interesting at the beginning where you said, and we've all seen some kids zipping by on scooters. I remember once talking to a parent, and when I was at Road Safety with Montreal Police, and I said, can you do me a favor? I said, could you show me your son's cell phone? The person said, yeah, okay. So she showed me the cell phone, and I said, okay, what's that on the cell phone? Well, she said, that's something to protect the phone. Oh. And I said, your kid's not wearing any helmet. How's that in terms of, So we have to make sure that it is safe, and we have to get data. So that's all we're asking for, is that there's data, but also that's easy to understand. Because sometimes I remember when I used to do interviews when I was with Montreal Police, every time I would give media interviews about the legislation regarding scooters, and I would have to be brief basically by the legal department before for a couple of hours. I mean, it's ridiculous. So we have to find a way, and I know it's not easy. It could be very complex to make things simple, but I think that what this report is doing, exactly what I think the objective was to put it on the public agenda to say, listen, good news, we've got a lot of different ways to get around, and probably they'll keep on multiplying. Bad news is, or the downside is, we have to get data to justify also starting at what speed on a scooter, what would be the maximum speed? Okay, and so will we need a driver's license? Will we need something? I'm just saying like that. Those are just questions to which I don't have the answers, but for which we will have to get the answers. A couple of months ago, I was panelist with some managers from the CAA-Q, and that's what I was telling them. I said, I think our main challenge, everybody involved in road safety for the next couple of months or years, is going to be to sort of legislate or to manage the coexistence between all those various types of modes of transportation.
It is an interesting question about coexistence, isn't it? Because I think drivers might tend to say, e-bikes, e-scooters, get them onto the bike path. That's where they belong, away from motorized traffic. But some cyclists don't like, first of all, being around e-bikes because they go so fast, and they don't like being around e-scooters for the same reason. And because riders of e-scooters, I guess it's just perception, I think they have the reputation of being a little bit renegade on the road. So,
well, normally when you use those types of micro-mobility, also there's another factor. Generally speaking, we're talking about a younger crowd. I haven't seen many 90-year-olds on a scooter. So, it's something normally when we're younger, we tend to take more risks. But it's interesting what you mentioned, about coexistence. I remember many years back when we started to see a lot of those motorized wheelchairs. I would have cyclists call me and say, "What the heck are they doing on a bicycle path? They're in my way." And it can be on the sidewalk or on the street. It's because basically we only have three, I would say, types of roads. If you like, you got sidewalks, you got bicycle paths, and you've got the roads as we know them. But there are dozens.
That I absolutely get, because I'm sure you would also get pedestrians saying, "I don't want to share my sidewalk, not only with bikes and scooters, I don't want to share them with motorized wheelchairs because they can travel quite fast and they tend to be bulky, right? So they take up a lot of room." How do you have an inkling, André, how we are going to be able to manage the sharing of the road?
I tend to be optimistic. I would say it's through education. It's by talking about it, because let's face it, we're not going to build 10, 15, 20 different types of roads. So how will we manage to do that coexistence? And then once we agree, and I think it's going to require discussion from people involved in road safety, but also from different lobby groups, pedestrians, cyclists, because one thing that's interesting, I've given I don't know how many interviews in the past couple of days regarding that subject, and it shows one thing. It shows that there is interest for the subject, because each and every one of us, your listeners, in the same day could be a cyclist, could be a scooterist, could be a motorist, could be a pedestrian. So it touches each and every one of us. When we talk about sidewalks, you've got elderly people with canes or with walkers on the sidewalk. So you don't want a scooter zooming by. So basically right now, for the moment, for the past 2 or 3 years, I think the CAA-Q has had a pilot project with regards to scooters. Basically, without getting too technical, because it's very complicated, but basically they ask people to follow the same rules, if you want, as bicycles. So basically, on the right side of the road, we ask them to wear a helmet, of course, not on the phone. I've seen just yesterday, there were two kids, maybe 15, 16 years old on a scooter. There shouldn't be two. There should only be one on the scooter, no helmet, and guess what? On their cell phone.
No. Yeah, I get that.
And when you know the conditions of the roads in Montreal, if you're going on a scooter at 25 or 30 kilometers, that's quite an act. When you know the potholes and everything. There was actually, I don't know if you saw, there was a report about 2 weeks ago in the media regarding, I think it was a woman that was seriously injured because her scooter fell in a pothole and she was ejected from the scooter.
Yeah, I remember hearing that. Is there a helmet law specifically for scooters and e-bikes?
For scooters, there is, and for e-bikes as well. If you've seen, there was a lot of publicity in the media. I think Quebec City police decided to enforce the law because I don't want to give you wrong information. I don't know if it goes over 32, 35 kilometers an hour. They have to wear a helmet.
And e-bikes, is a helmet mandatory for an e-bike and also the minimum age of 14 the way it is for e-scooters?
For the e-bikes, it depends on what speed they can go to, and that's one thing I was mentioning at the beginning, the lack of uniformity in legislation. Some people bought some e-bikes outside the province because it used to be legislated federally, but now it's province by province. So you could buy an e-bike in a province where the speed may be higher and stuff, so there's no uniformity. So it's hard for people to know exactly what to do.
It is certainly very frustrating to have this kind of patchwork approach where, yes, helmets for you, no helmets for you, or it depends on how fast your vehicle goes if you're, minimum age. I'm so glad, André, that we're starting to talk about this and starting to talk about the need to have some type of a unified set of rules where everybody knows what the rules are. Thanks very much for your time.
You're most welcome.